If you're looking to make solar simple, give Ron Domenico with AD Energy a call. All-day energy made simple. Solar solutions with zero down, options to lease or finance, and roofs and trees are no issue. Call Ron Domenico at 609-226-2802 and tell him you saw him on the Sports Box.
Well, hello again, and welcome to the show that, my God, you just can't get enough of, even in your sleep. This is the Sports Box, where the only opinion that matters is right here. I am Mike Galetta, a.k.a. Hamilton Mike, along with my partner, Brian, the Range Retard. Brian, how are you today?
Dude, I need disability insurance for this, man.
Yeah, well,
this is ridiculous.
You know what, deal with it. We'll be done doing enough shows now, deal with it. How's that? Today we are going to talk a little bit more NHL hockey because of the draft coming up with the Las Vegas Golden Knights and the NHL Draft upon us. And on the line we have a guest. He is a writer for the BlueSeatBlog.com site. He's a well-known hockey guy, knows his stuff inside and out, and you know what, Brian? That's why we have him on the show, because all we do is bring winners.
Most certainly.
Let's talk to him right now. His name is Josh Khalfin. Josh, welcome to the show.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Not much. So, you know, Josh, we're gonna kick it off. We've been going back and forth with the upcoming draft. Tell us your feeling about the Vegas team. How do you think they're going to how they're going to do in the draft this year?
I mean, for the expansion draft, it sounded like at first that they were going to build a pretty good team because a lot of guys were exposed, and now it's starting to look like with all the leaks that, you know, maybe they're just trying to bottom out and trying to get a top pick in the 2018 draft. Regarding this draft, honestly, I think they go for a forward, try to build like a bunch of like dynamic guys real quick, you know, trying to get that face of the franchise early so they can market them.
So, Josh, at the top of this draft, I think this is one of those years where everybody knows who's going to go one and who's going to go two. At least they have a preference. Between Nolan, Patrick, and Nico Hischier, it feels a lot like a couple years ago when it was Taylor Hall versus Tyler Seguin. You know, obviously, as Ranger Flyer fans here on the show, we got two teams in our division picking 1-2. How do you think this plays out? Who do you think the Devils take, and what should Flyers fans think about the guy they're going to end up with?
Well, personally, I would choose Nico Hischier first, and I think the Devils will do that as well.
Yep.
And that's honestly for a couple of reasons. One, they just acquired another Swiss player, so it sounds like, you know, they're trying to get a little bit of a community to make, you know, Nico Hischier feel a little bit more comfortable. Also, personally, I think Nico Hischier is just the more dynamic player. And, you know, when you're in a draft like this, you know, this is not a McDavid draft, this is not a Matthews draft. This is a draft that lacks that generational talent. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, if you're picking first overall, I think you should personally get a little bit of a more boom or bust type player. And I think Nico Hischier is that. Nolan Patrick is a little bit more of like that safer kind of guy. He's a good leader, two-way forward. But, you know, Nico Hischier really shouldn't have his defensive game underrated either. He's known to work pretty hard. I know there was a story that a junior team was doing a couple of drills, and he actually asked his coach if he could do it from the defensive side as well, just in case he might be a forward back on a play. So, both guys are pretty good. I think the Flyers fans, I think they really shouldn't care. I mean, I would prefer Nico Hischier, but the reality of the fact is they started with a 13th overall pick, and now they take second. So whoever they get, most likely is better who are they going to get like a month ago before the draft lottery actually took place. So I think it's fine. Nolan Patrick, given, you know, the Flyers center depth with Giroux, Couturier, I think that's a really good position for him to get like really into the NHL, into the role that people are sort of expecting from him, that reliable two-way guy, a good bridge between the defense and the offense. He's a good center. They both are, really.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. To piggyback off of that a little bit, the news that I'm hearing too is also that Nolan has a little bit of a history with injuries. So whether that's, you know, going to end up the Flyers' fate that they're going to get the lesser of two evils with the injury for the second pick, but like you said, I think this guy is going to be a good player in itself, and they need that with the downside of Giroux's career.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's honestly his injury history, my biggest concern. I'm starting to get a little bit more involved in maybe the biostats behind, you know, the NHL, because I know they're starting to like seep into that in baseball and, you know, even football. And I have a friend who works at a sports science lab, and he's been giving me a little bit of like some news, a little bit of papers to read. And the reality of the fact is that if you're 18 years old and you had as many groin injuries and shoulder injuries Nolan Patrick may have had, or has been reported to have. I mean, that really sucks. How much longer can the kid actually play his game without getting hurt again? But in terms of pure skill, I mean, he hit like 100 points a year ago. He would have been a first-round pick, probably top 5 if he was in the 2016 draft.
Yeah, that's a bad injury to have, the groin injury with any kind of hockey player. Yeah.
I honestly, personally, like him better than the Columbus Blue Jackets sort of all pick Dubois. I honestly like Patrick better. He's a good player, and honestly, the Flyers organization is really working pretty well under Hextall there. They're building up those depth guys first. They have really good prospects coming in, great defensive depth in the organization. So if they can get a star player or a potential star player like Patrick or Hischier, I think that just bodes well altogether because they have the other pieces. And I think when you're building a team, if you could get those other pieces, those really good potential second-line players, potential first-line wingers that aren't actually like the elite players, and like that really reliable second-pair guys, and then you add this potential star player, it just speeds up your rebuild because you automatically just infuse that really hard thing to get, and you've built the depth already. So I honestly think the Flyers organization is looking up pretty well, and it sucks to say that as a Rangers fan, but gotta bite the bullet there.
Yep.
Now, going to the goaltenders, because I am the goaltender of the group here. Me and Brian obviously agree, and I think you will too, that Marc-Andre Fleury is the obviously choice coming out of Pittsburgh to be the goaltender for Las Vegas. But my question to you is, for the backups, or is there any other guy that should be on our radar, or that maybe they'll take an about face and grab before Fleury?
I mean, the goalie market seems to be pretty big free agent-wise. I mean, we have Brian Elliott, who obviously didn't really succeed with Calgary, otherwise they would be keeping him. But for the most part, Brian Elliott, prior to the season, seemed like the kind of guy who would do really well in like those 50-40 games. Like, he's a really good split goalie. And the advanced stats for goaltending actually value him pretty nicely. And honestly, the same could be said for Steve Mason. The interesting thing is that, Dallas went for Ben Bishop and Calgary went for Mike Smith. And then all of a sudden Detroit exposed Peter Mrazek. And, that sort of flips the goalie market upside down, because I was personally expecting like Steve Mason to Dallas, maybe Mrazek to be kept by Detroit. Now they have the goalie problems. It sounds like Detroit won't be losing Mrazek in expansion. So now we might see a lot more trades. And I mean, there's also the potential that, backup goalies like Andre Pavlik or Anders Nielsen can be had for pretty cheap. So I think there's a lot of possibilities with the goalie market. And if you're a team that already has like a first, a real top goalie, like the Rangers, for example, I think it might be a little bit better to just be patient and wait for maybe a name to be had for cheaper if they don't decide to trade on Ronson. So, like the goalie market is just insane at the moment. For the draft, I think this is actually a pretty great goaltending draft. You have a lot of guys who seem like they could be really top prospects from pretty much all countries. You have Maxim Zhukov from Russia. He actually plays in the USHL. You have 2 Swedish goalies who might be had later, like Adam Hamann. Finland has Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. And obviously, America has probably the number 1 goalie in this draft, Jake Ettinger, who, rumor has it, is probably going to go to Ottawa at 28 if he's still available. So, the draft is really looking up for a lot of goalies. It's pretty awesome.
We're talking to Josh Khalfin of BlueSeatBlogs.com.
So, Josh, obviously, as Ranger fans, we don't really know what this feels like to have a first-round pick. It's going to be their first, assuming they keep it. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but assuming they make this pick, it's going to be their first pick since Brady Shea in 2012. They've been a team that's done really well without making their picks. Obviously, getting guys like Kevin Hayes and Jimmy Vesey as college free agents has helped quite a bit. They're very active in that. But it looks like they're going to finally make a pick here at 21 from everything that we know. What do you think is going to be there for them there, and which direction do you think that they go, given the fact that they really have a lot of needs all over the place? I mean, other than really goaltending, oddly enough, for the Rangers, they do have some holes in their system that you're going to see not taking first-round picks for 4 seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's three different ways we can look at the Rangers' potential picks this first round. There is the defense. Obviously, the defense has been a concern for the Rangers at the actual NHL level. But they have been, slowly taking some pretty good prospects. Sean Day is a pretty good boomer and bust kind of guy. Ryan Graves is very close to the NHL level. So, and even Sergei Bobrovsky had a pretty good defensive year this year in the WHL. So, with that, as well as with the fact that I think that this draft has a really, really good amount of defensive depth. Like, you could probably pick up a second or third rounder and get a pretty good defenseman, maybe two. There is depth there, which makes me believe that the Rangers might go forward. If they do go defense, though, I prefer Erik Brannstrom, who's a really good puck-moving defenseman from Sweden. He really does look dynamic. He looks like Erik Karlsson, but left-handed. Obviously, he won't be as good as Erik Karlsson. It's really hard to find any defenseman that will be, but damn, he looks pretty damn good. Then there is, big 6'6" Nick Hogg. I mean, this kid is just like the perfect two-way defenseman. He does everything, both physically. He's smart on the ice. He breaks up passes. At 6'6", he has a massive reach, so he doesn't really let people get around him. He also has some pretty good goal-scoring numbers. So this kid looks like more like a jack of all trades, like good at everything, but not great at everything. There's a lot of really good Finnish defensemen who might be available, like Juuso Valimaki. He's more of a offensive defenseman, but I personally think that a team like Boston or Toronto will take him before he's taken by the Rangers. And then there are the two that a lot of Rangers fans have been a little bit, discussing, arguing a little bit over, is Connor Timmins, who's probably one of the better offensive defensemen from Canada this year. He's, I looked at some of the stats on it, and he's like far and away the best offensively producing defenseman. And he actually also does pretty well defensively, though it does get overlooked. And then there's Cal Foote, who is the son of Adam Foote, who plays very similar to his father. Really, really smart defensive player. And I honestly think there's a little bit more upside to him. He just has bad goal-scoring numbers, but, I mean, if you're a good player, you don't shoot 1% over the course of the season.
Right. Makes sense.
So I think all of a sudden his goal-scoring numbers will probably explode next year. And people will be like, oh, how did he go so low? He's a pretty good player. He's a smart player. He's one of those really safe, probable type of defenseman. But if you're the Rangers, I think you want to go more for high potential, especially since this is your first round pick in nearly 5 years, not 5 years.
Absolutely. And I'll encourage all of the guys watching the Sports Box today, follow Josh on Twitter at Josh_Khalfin, Khalfin. I got to tell you, I've been following Josh through drafts the last couple of years. I don't find many people that know more about Euro prospects and guys I've never heard of more than Josh does, and he nails it. Josh, for this year, there's going to be, and there always seems to be, that diamond-in-the-rough type player who's nobody's heard of. Either he plays in Russia or he plays overseas, and it's just this name that comes out of nowhere. I'm reminded of like Anton Slepyshev, for example, like a player who nobody's really talking about. It's going to be a day 2 pick that's going to be, wow, how did 31 teams pass over this guy a bunch of times, and he ends up in the league. Anybody this year kind of stand out to you as that diamond-in-the-rough type guy that no one's talking about that's going to make a splash at some point?
Honestly, I think there are a lot of guys, and this is the sort of the thing that I think a lot of teams are starting to lean towards after Detroit decided to completely dominate the NHL for a decade using this. Take European kids in like the last few rounds, because chances are, a lot of teams didn't really look at them maybe because of their area or just their team, but from following a lot of Russian hockey, I can think of 3 pretty good names to look at, all varying at different ages. We have, at 20 years old, who's barely actually eligible to be drafted because he's got passed over the last few years, Alexander Kalunin. He plays in the KHL. This kid is literally like a semi-automatic. I've never seen a kid who's so trigger-happy in his life, especially in a pro league. Like, this kid shoots every chance he gets, and his shot is absolutely filthy. He can hit corners, he can overpower people. He's just a right-handed shot, but he's very small. And he's producing at pretty insane levels in the KHL. So I think a lot of teams are now sort of going to try to draft this kid just to keep his rights so that, you know, when he does decide to come to the NHL, like Artemi Panarin, you have the first pick and not all 30 teams or 31 teams have a chance to go try to sign him. You just want to keep his rights. Another kid who got passed over last year was Artemi Panarin, and the reason he got passed over was his size for the most part, and he was pretty slow. He's not the greatest skater, which is always a problem if you're like 5'9" like he is. But he just produced over 120 points in like 50, 60 games in the NHL, which is like Russia's version of junior hockey.
Okay.
And that's, I mean, like, everybody else barely produced 60 points. I mean, when you produce almost double the amount of points as everybody else, I think that warrants somebody to take a chance on you. And then we have Alexei Toropchenko, who's, I don't know, like, I watch him play, he's like Russian fighter. Like, sometimes he's pretty dumb, other times he just blows past people, but he knows how to use his body well, and then all of a sudden he surprises people with like an absolute like sick goal. Like he just picks a corner when nobody's expecting it, or sets up a really good play. This is the kind of guy that I've seen different ranges. Like some people say he's worth getting picked in the second round. Other people say he might not even get picked until around 6. So that's the kind of guy that I think probably will make the biggest amount of noise.
You know,
and normally I would restrict this to like Russia and Europe. Like for Sweden, Fabian Zetterlund is a really good prospect. He's like one of those quick buzzsaw type players who chips in a really good goal, bothers the opposition a little bit because he's just an annoying player. All of a sudden he steals the puck from you and just keeps shooting it. A little bit, you know, weak defensively, but that's expected when you're 18 years old. But a really good Canadian that I like, who hasn't been getting enough press or any information like out there, is Cale Fleury of the WHL. He's on a really horrible team, and yet he's doing extremely well defensively. And he's been able to produce pretty well. And if you're on a really horrible team and you're doing this well, you know, the WHL and all these junior leagues are really fluid. Like every 2 years, the team that was worse will probably end up battling for the Memorial Cup. So I think Cale Fleury is the kind of guy that you try to, you know, buy a little bit of stock into, especially if he falls later, like in the 4th round, which is where he's projected. I think he's one of those players who, just like when the Rangers chose Ryan Graves, surprised a lot of people and say, how the hell did he drop that low?
Now, I guess my last question is just talking a little bit about the KHL and some of the guys that the Rangers specifically have coming in their system. You know, a lot of, in past years, I think more than recent, you always hear the quote-unquote Russian factor in drafts, and that's why guys tend to fall lower than maybe they should. A couple of guys, you know, one was a Ranger draft pick, one was a Ranger free agent signing. Recently, they signed Alexei Bereglazov out of the KHL. He's expected to, you know, join the Rangers pro team, or at least, at very least, Hartford this season. And also, Igor Shesterkin was a 5th-round pick a couple of years ago in the 2014 draft, who some believe is the heir apparent to Henrik Lundqvist in goal. For Ranger fans who may not be as knowledgeable about these guys as maybe they should be, frankly, any kind of color you can give on what we can expect and when we can expect to see these guys producing for the pro club.
Yeah, no problem. So, Alexei Bereglazov is really interesting because the Rangers have actually been in contact with him for the last 3 or 4 years. They've been really, like, I believe Gordy Clark had an interview in which he briefly spoke about him, and Gordy Clark pretty much said they've been wanting to draft him during his draft-eligible years, but he just wasn't there yet. They were uncertain to see if he would actually take that next step in his development, and then he ended up doing it. So the Rangers have apparently been in contact with him for a while, so they clearly like the guy. They clearly know what's coming. And Bereglazov is a really good player. He's very calm and collected. At 6'4", he could actually skate pretty well too. He's not in the traffic zone. And the cool thing is, he could play both sides, and he's actually been better on the right side than the left side, because all of a sudden he could just jump into the play and surprise people. And, like, you know, when a 6'4" defenseman all of a sudden decides to turn on the jet and starts, like, trying to barrel into the crease, I think teams are going to start to get a little bit nervous. And if, you know, if the Rangers coaching staff allows him to slowly, you know, get accustomed to the North American style of hockey, I think we might see a player who could be a really reliable bottom pair guy. And one of those kinds of guys that the other 30 teams probably wouldn't care about, but, you know, us in New York would truly appreciate him for what he is. And he's just overall good two-way defenseman. He has a little bit of offensive flair, but he's very good defensively. And, he likes to clear the crease. He throws in like a cheap cross-check if needed. He's a good defenseman. A little bit old school, but he can skate too, so I like him a lot. And rumor is that he actually has a KHL outlaw, so if he doesn't make the NHL, he'll be going back to Russia, which makes me think that we could pretty much assume that he might be at the very least our seventh defenseman.
Fantastic.
So, Josh, my last question to you is, obviously being the Flyers fan that I am, with the news up here, Edward Bellemare being taken probably by Vegas tomorrow. I'll probably have to take a sleep aid tonight because I won't be able to sleep over that. But do you see anybody else in the draft on any team that somebody might take an about face and Las Vegas really jump off the board and take somebody to say, wow, I never thought that would have happened?
Yeah, I think Edmonton just lost Griffin Reinhardt to Las Vegas.
And we both had that here on the Sports Box, that's right.
That was our prediction.
Right. Griffin Reinhardt, what a story,
Stud.
fourth overall, guaranteed Norris Trophy winner, all of a sudden, traded by Islanders, and the Islanders got two pretty good prospects out of those picks. And then Edmonton was like, oh no, don't worry, it's definitely worth it. We just traded away the 60th overall pick, and he's barely played like 20 games for them, and now he's picked by Las Vegas. It's just really, really weird.
Edmonton being Edmonton.
So, it's just, I don't know, man. It really does sound like they're just trying to say, okay, we're going to try to get like some depth guys. If we don't like players from a team, we're just going to try to make our AHL team look somewhat good. And then, we're going to bottom out and just take some pretty good picks.
And actually, I have one more quick one for you, Josh. Looking at the list, Colorado comes to mind because Colorado is just an awful team. We were looking at their lineup. We couldn't figure out who they're going to take. Do you have anybody in mind that could come off that bad Colorado team?
Yeah, I was looking at it a couple of days ago, or if not last night, just for Untapped Friendly's mock draft tool. And I'm looking at it, and I'm just
baffled.
I don't know. Even their wannabe prospects who may or may not make the NHL don't even look that alluring.
Yeah.
At that point, when something like that happens, I just decide, all right, you can really never go wrong with a goalie. So I would pick Calvin Hart. He played for Hockey Canada earlier this summer, so he might have some trade value later on. Yeah, may as well. Yeah, I really can't think of anybody else from them.
Yeah, we had gone with Mikhail Grigorenko just based on the age, based on the pedigree. He hasn't really seen it yet, but Colorado, man. Talk about a team that got screwed, right?
I really like Grigorenko, and I thought, I think I was around 17-ish at the time, when Buffalo chose Zemgus Girgensson and Nico Grigorenko. A year after they chose Zadorov and Ristolainen, and I'm like, oh wow, they're building a pretty damn good team. Man, it's crazy how things like that happen. The draft is a crapshoot, and when you put a lot of stock into it, it's hard when a lot of these picks don't work out. And I really do hope Grigorenko works out. And maybe I can't even say that he needs a center because Colorado was stacked with McKinnon and Duchesne. So who knows? Maybe he just has to change his game around or something. It's unfortunate, really.
Well, that's all the time we have for the NHL today. I want to thank our guest from the BlueSeatBlogs.com site. He's one of the writers there. His name is Josh Khalfin. Josh, thank you very much, and I hope that we can get you back on the show maybe in the upcoming weeks to talk about this Las Vegas team to see how they're going to unfold during the season, and even get you back on during the season when it starts to give your analysis on how the Rangers are starting to lose. How the NHL's I wish, and how the NHL's going. Is that a plan?
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely. Just let me know, man.
Great. We appreciate it. Josh Khalfin from the BlueSeatBlogs.com. Thanks, Josh. We appreciate it.
No problem.
And you got to remember, you can always get this show on social media if you need to.
Absolutely. By now you can find us very easily on Facebook and Twitter, both at SportsBox Show. And of course, if you're yet to subscribe to the YouTube channel, we have great content, great guests just like Josh today. We want to bring you as much good content as we can. Go ahead and subscribe to the Sports Box, and so every time we have great content just for you, you're notified.
God, if we don't have good content here, we're doing something wrong, and you get good content every time you watch this show. So remember, at the Sports Box, the only opinion that matters. It's right here. Thanks for watching, folks. See ya.
This episode of The Sports Box is brought to you by Mic'd Up Entertainment and DJ Mike Velardi. For all of your event planning needs, make sure you contact Mike at 609-864-5925 and tell him that you saw him on The Sports Box.
1, 2, 3.
Don't forget to subscribe.